Okay, well, so what we're doing is we're following this trail of breadcrumbs, and I came to the doctrine of cycles, and this is such an incredible little book, and it does provide an absolutely awesome foundation for this awareness of these cycles and how this is coming about. And we should all know this. It's short enough. This isn't going to be a long, drawn out thing. This is a rather quick, a pretty quick study, probably a couple of days, and on to the next. So we're going to try to get through the first couple chapters, if not the first section today. But here we go. Chapter 1, the introduction. The doctrine of cycles is a most important, fascinating, and illuminating subject as it is presented in the theosophical teachings. In studying it, we find here is a logical and comprehensive law which not only bears an intimate relation to our daily lives, but also has a universal range of operation. And as our awareness grows, we can see this. This becomes a part of our own awareness, which is just amazing. It not only concerns the details of our whole life, but it applies to everything and to every being in the universe. In short, the law of cyclic recurrences proves to be the principle or regulator for timing the events and operations of everything, visible and invisible, in mind and in matter, in time and in space. And I've had it said to me that you can count on it, and it's very mechanical in nature. We find in it at last a reason why things happen when they do. The ancients well understood the vast sweep of the natural law of periodicity, and they included it in the cosmic scheme of unity when they said, as it is above, so it is below. And HPB pointed out that it taught the absolute universality of that law of periodicity, of flux and reflux, ebb and flow, which physical science has observed and recorded in all departments of nature. An alteration such as that of day and night, life and death, sleeping and walking, is a fact so common, so perfectly universal and without exception, that it is easy to comprehend that in it we see one of the absolutely fundamental laws of the universe. Cycles are so common that we take them for granted as much as we do the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the solid earth under our feet. We cannot imagine what our world would be like without the familiar repetition of light and darkness every 24 hours of the year's regular seasons, these things that keep pace with the planet's daily rotation and its yearly course around the sun. We too follow the same rhythmic course of action, going to sleep at night and awaking next morning for another turn of activity. Likewise, on a larger scale, we round out a lifetime. We begin with the misty dawn of infancy, which merged into childhood's awakening, expands into youth's bright morning, and so on to the noonday meridian of mature years. Next comes the turn on the arc of that one life, and we gradually slow down to sink to rest with the lengthening shadows of old age. But the pulsations of the spiritual self deep within us never cease, whether we are embodied here or are freed from earth. When death releases us from the body, when a new cycle of birth begins in the soul's homeland. After death, our better self awakens in higher realms of being, where it is infilled with beautiful visions and blissful, refreshing rest that gives strength and courage for another term of Earth's lessons. Thus we come back again and again with a newborn infant's fresh body and brain, ready for another round and working out our splendid destiny. Meantime, our uncounted lives are like small epicycles on the majestic arc of the solar system's lifetime. Thus, likewise, do countless universes come into being. After their vast cosmic sweep of a manifested life period reaches its apex, the movement is set toward the end of that wheeling. Finally, the embodiment of the whole universe dissolves in the ocean of space for a cosmic rest wherein all prepare for another grander round of manifesting life. As it is below, so it is above. In the passing moments, we see the time atoms, so to say, the revolving units of time measure. The rhythmic recurrences are like pulsations of time flowing steadily during the life period of a universe with all its interrelated wheels within wheels of time, space, and consciousness. With all its interrelated wheels within wheels within wheels of time, space, and consciousness. The human pilgrim is a spark of the divine flame descending through all realms of matter to reascend through a perfected humanhood to godhood, cycling back to divinity. A cycle means a ring or turning. It is not a closed ring, but a continuous rounding course. It's expanding and advancing so that the depth of its previous round is covered with a broader sweep of progress. The form of a cycle is somewhat like a circular stairway wherein or whereon, and going up or down, we are always above or below the level of the preceding step or of the several steps that are covered in one round. Another form of a cycle's course is seen in the way the thread of a screw winds around and up from its small starting point. A typical example of cyclic growth is found in the expanding curves of the chambered nautilus, and even in the shape of the common snail shell. A craftsman will find suggestive lines in a spiral spring, or will see a more perfect symbol in the progressive curves of a helix spring. However, no symbolic form can begin to picture the intricate movement and complex character of the countless wheels within wheels of time, of conditions, and of conscious unfolding life that are always operating together. So no symbolic form can begin to picture that. Universal motion follows a spiral course upon all planes of being, physical and superphysical. The same evolutionary pathway is continued through the material, mental, and spiritual realms. Does not the run of everyday life show the interplay of the activity of the human body, mind, and spirit? Certainly does. The greater cycle includes numerous lesser ones of various sizes, character, and interacting influences, as we shall see. There is nothing haphazard in all this because everything moves with the coordinate precision of intelligent guidance. We are in a universe of natural law and order. We know that nature does not move by disorderly and causeless leaps and bounds. A child does not grow up in a day, nor does winter change to summer overnight. Each thing and each event plays its part in some greater round by proceeding along its own course, which is karmically adjusted to the whole. The general overlapping and intermingling of cycles stands out clearly in the history of the great root races. Here, as elsewhere, the rule holds good. The close of one great racial cycle merges into the beginning of a new racial career, and this change occurs at the climax or greatest round of activity of a third race's period of existence. Thus, the later egos of the disappearing third root race mingled with the few forerunners of the fifth root race at the middle period of the fourth root race. It is all as natural as the familiar overlapping changes in events of daily life, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, all run along in a continued story. Our own sense of our identity at its full in the present is also the meeting point of a receding past self and of an income or oncoming future selfhood. I'm sorry, as I'm reading this, that was the idea of the vector state collapse kind of came to me, that this continuity is happening. It's said, I think, 30,000 times per second, which is what is keeping this this continuity, moving that we're seeing here. As the racial cycles will be discussed later, we have a more familiar example of overlapping and intermingling spheres of influence here and now. The periodic recurrence of karmic conditions from past lives explains much of the puzzling state of our world's condition. While our modern civilization has reached a certain climax of a brilliant intellectual and materialistic evolution, the old order of things generally in government, science, religion, business, etc., is passing away. The struggles of the outgoing cycle mingle with the birth pangs of a new one, which will open the way for a saner and better balanced progress. Those who are wise may read an open challenge in the sign of the times. There is danger in holding back and clinging to the outgrown standards of the individual and collective life. Those who invoke the finer forces of their own nature will go forward, sharing in the mighty urge of the current of universal life, flowing onward through everything and every creature. And there's the danger. We just read that. There's a danger in holding back and clinging to the outgrown standards of the individual and collective life. Now, how to express that and how to recognize that. And it's a pretty big deal there. That's something that we wish everyone had the awareness of, right? In many ways, present conditions seem like repetitions of those which prevailed in the heyday of Roman power and knowledge, preceding the decline and fall of the empire. It certainly does. There's the same lack of that equalizing spiritual growth, which is essential for the natural balance of great mental and material gains. I don't have a judgment on this, but I want to say that there is certainly more spiritual, equalizing spiritual growth evident right now, and at least on the teetering on that. Evidently, we have also reached the safe limits in our control of the forces of mind and matter. Okay, these forces, neutral in themselves, are potent for good or evil. Used for the benefit of humanity, they work for the welfare of all. Used selfishly, they react in disintegration and destruction. We need not repeat the mistakes of the past. The time has come for humanity to become more wholly human by bringing forth the finer and noble qualities and powers from within its own nature. And we've talked about these things quite often and what they, harmlessness, the brotherhood of all humanity. We've gone into these non-separativeness or non-separation, and unity. We've talked about these things quite often. Without question, the present time is a critical one, but if we face the responsibility of it open-eyed and honestly, it is seen as a time of unusual opportunity. And DK says this quite often in the Ageless Wisdom, in the Blue Books. Human beings are essentially spiritual beings who can control the energies which their selfishness operates for their own undoing. Can control the energies. We can transfer the same power into vitalizing a better and more timely order of world affairs. For a new cycle of inner light and peace and progress is already dawning behind the obscuring storm clouds which darken the outlook. And we know this to be the case as well. The masters of the wisdom foresaw the present chaotic world conditions, basing their knowledge on and timing their work with the law of cycles. And, this can also be related, back to the rays as well. 7 rays. They sent their messenger, H.P. Blavatsky, to prepare people for the inevitable confusion of a transition period. And we also had, Alice Bailey and others as well. But she founded the Theosophical Society through which to bring back to us the forgotten truth of our divine birthright, which unites in a universal brotherhood. In the light of mankind's common origin, mutual interests, and final destiny, it is time to leave childish things behind and to go forward with the new cycle, working with the great scheme, certainly. While the 20th century has been speeding up its pace, astronomers tell us that our planetary home, the good Earth, is also entering into a new region on its journey through space. Mother Earth is bringing us where the influence of Aquarius reigns in that 12-spoked wheel called the zodiac. In fact, everything is moving on a conical spiral pathway onward. That is why it is impossible for anything, however tiny or however vast its pathway may be, to return into itself like a closed ring. Think of our moon and its monthly pathway around the Earth, which in its turn is moving along its yearly cycle around the glorious sun, whose orbit encircles a greater center of a galaxy that is wheeling its majestic way through illimitable space. Every heavenly body is following the broader sweep of some other progressing center. In this eternal motion of a divine mechanism, there are endless wheels within wheels within wheels, all moving with a universal plan or purpose. The picture is too vast for the mind to grasp it, but it is evident that at any point reached by a celestial sphere, its orbit is somewhat further along in the cosmos than it was on its preceding round, and there is none, nor was there end, and there is none, nor was there beginning. It is a stimulated and liberating thought that we are all journeying through the universe in such good company. For every planet and sun and star is the body or dwelling of some bright celestial being. A friendly universe is no mere figure of speech, but is literal truth. The whole scheme of things is so perfect, so just, and so natural that the only question is, how could it be otherwise? And that was, it's nice to hear things like that, right? That should put a smile on everybody's face there. All right, chapter 2, man and the nature allied in cyclic progress. Just give me 1 second here. Okay. There is a purpose in every important act of nature, whose acts are all cyclic and periodical. Nature repeats herself everywhere. She follows grooves of action that have already been made. She follows the line of least resistance in all cases and everywhere. And it is upon this repetitive action of our great mother, universal nature, that is founded the law of cycles, which is the enacting of things that have been before, although each such repetition, as said, is at each new manifestation on a higher plane and with a larger sweep or field of action. Nature moves like a great wheel ever turning round and round, so that as it goes forward in time and space, each of its spokes takes its regular turn and moving upward, forward, downward, and backward. As the whole wheel of the universe rolls onward, every atom of it gains ground and experience, and also adds its impulse to the common urge forward. This evolutionary urge in mankind is naturally quickened in greater or lesser degree by mind and self-consciousness. Thus, we are able to help things below us as we in turn are helped by the wiser, greater beings. At first thought, this sweeping picture of progress may seem too vague and unfamiliar to interest or concern us, even if we could understand it. Of course, the details of our universe are beyond human comprehension. Nevertheless, the laws of cycles is so evident in its universal operation that it proves the unity of man and nature, both evolving with a common purpose. And that's why we're reading this, because it is evident. The evidence of an ever-recurring movement stands out clearly in the flow of everyday affairs. We have only to recognize the cyclic law operating before our eyes to understand how it works likewise in vast horizons beyond our vision. Does not the periodical recurrence of night and day, a time for sleeping and waking, prove itself? This familiar example, so simple to us, involves the working of the whole earth turning once, an enormous move which is timed to the minute. It goes without saying that no one could begin to understand how that one turn of the earth affected everything upon it. Of all the lands and waters, plants, beasts, and men, nothing is exactly the same as it was on the previous morning. The point is that all move together, each of the countless things moving in its own cycle of experience within that one turning of the earth wheel. By analogy, we may grasp the idea that this working of the universal rule of spiral pathways is as simple and as comprehensive as the child's ABCs and the multiplication table. The same letters learned in the primer are used by wise men to spell out the profoundest truths, while the digits we use in petty personal accounts work accurately in enormous mathematical calculations. Today's science is moving with the new cycle in careful studies of the recurring conditions, not only in the various departments of nature, forces, and phenomena, but likewise in the course of human affairs. Science is becoming keenly conscious of the close relation of all its researches to everyday life and to the present and future welfare of mankind. Furthermore, there is a growing move to verify the findings of a periodicity in one field of study by comparison with the reported evidence of cycles in other lines of investigation. The deeper these researches go, the more clearly there is revealed an underlying unity of man and nature. For instance, those strange sunspots are being studied in relation to the weather, growth and vegetation, wars, business fluctuations, radio reception, etc., etc. Periodicity is being observed and recorded in the occurrence of floods, droughts, famines, diseases, calamities, magnetic storms, auroras, earthquakes, also in the appearance of great men and in eras of advances and recessions, in the arts and sciences, in the rise and fall of nations and of whole civilizations, and the change of continental coastlines and mountains slowly rising or sinking, in ice ages that came and went, leaving as evidence of past eras of tropical climates in high latitudes, and the seasonal habits of animals and whatnot. This scientific interest is echoed by the popular press. This opens the way for more knowledge of the ancient law of cycles, which is the natural key motion everywhere. No scientific training is needed or even much imagination to see that recurring change in the earth itself are inevitably reflected upon the life of its inhabitants. This fact comes home to us as being interesting enough, and the evidence that humanity and nature are interrelated and are evolving under the same law is as simple as it is comprehensive. The working of the periodic law may be followed either way, from small to large issues and vice versa. Considering the recurrent events of time, of matter, and of conscious life, first take the revolving atoms, making the molecules which, united in cells, form the organs making the whole human body, which lasts a lifetime. At death, the atoms disperse, revolve through other forms of earth matter, and when the individual is due to begin another round of incarnation, they come together to help build his new body. Next, the conscious life sparks the inner self. Next, take the conscious life spark, the inner self, evolving through the unfolding body of the embryo, the infant, the child, the youth, the adult, then leaving the aged body and passing from life here to begin a life of existence in ethereal realms. Meantime, the passing moments have become hours, days, weeks, years, which in turn go on to become centuries, solar lifetimes, complete rounds of the universe, and so on. These minute cycles of the atoms of time, of conscious unfolding life, and of matter are working in the small of what is summed up scientifically as time-space continuum. From this unity at the summit of a universal circuit, the units begin to separate and to cycle down the progressive series of levels to the place of minutest rounds. Considering in the large or in the small, all follow the one plan of progress. Matter becomes more perfect material, small time cycles become vast periods, and re-embodying man brings forth more of his immortal self, a living force circulating everywhere, vitalizes everything into becoming more of itself. We hear that a lot, right? And becoming, man becoming God, however you want to put it. It is the one life itself which is ever coming and going in all the different forms of substances. It is destined to an endless round of creation, preservation, and destruction of its forms. And recognizing this fact, some deep thinkers have summed up the secrets of nature as motion. To this, theosophy adds that this universal movement is responsive to the rhythm of a cosmic heartbeat. Each entity's response to this vital central impulse is its own key number of pulsations. Some rate of vibration is present in all the inner and outer spheres of life, above, below, around, and within us. Science defines the subtle forces of X-rays, infrared, and ultraviolet, light, radio waves, etc., and the special vibratory rates of each. We all know that the different vibratory rates of light waves take the form of prismatic colors, and that we hear a series of sound waves in the musical scale. Do not we ourselves have an individual rate of vibration which is variously in tune or out of tune with conditions and people around us, certainly. There is cosmic intelligence back of a divine purpose which keys human destiny with that of universal Mother Nature. The wise ancients understood this mystic truth both in its simple and in its expanded meanings. They saw a universal law working in everything and in every creature. A living test of its reality was spread abroad for all who had eyes to see. And it still is. It was taught of old that because a man was an inseparable part of the universe, he was involved in and concerned with all natural processes. This knowledge of things as they are freed man from the dread of death and from all fear of hereafter, of suffering, or of final oblivion. And this seems like it could be hit on a little bit harder here because we could just blow right by that. But this is very true here. Huge statement there. He had no fear of the unknown while feeling his oneness with the sun and stars, as well as with the whole unfolding panorama of his earth home. This is still the case. That untroubled time was in the golden age when the world was young. Now it sounds like a fairy story. I think we disagree now because we're hitting these levels of consciousness now. Well, the fairy stories and legends that our children love are based upon realities that surrounded our racial childhood. If those ideals had never been real to us, how could we respond to them as we do at heart, and thus keep them alive from age to age in myth and legend? A few of our most intuitive philosophers and scientists are beginning to realize that there must be a unity, even a conscious oneness underlying all things. This recognition of natural truth was anticipated in the theosophical teachings in the 19th century. Then H.P. Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine repeated the forgotten story of the origin and destiny of mankind, of the planet, and of the universe. She came because the time was ripe for us to regain something of our forgotten birthright of the larger truth. In this period, our Iron Age, we have lost sight of a wonderful heritage from a far-off past. We have become divorced from nature. This has stunted our finer growth and has blurred our outlook on life. Mentally, we have withdrawn from our place as the beings who were to play the human part in this planetary drama. We seemingly stand apart from non-human things, regarding them as somehow alien, if not often hostile to us. Yet everything below us on the ladder of life is on its way to become human, just as we will outgrow the human stage. Finally, we'll reach the level of the men gods who preceded us. All are moving together on some round of a grand spiral pathway. All share in a common welfare, so that everything is helped by moving in unison with the whole. It is a friendly universe at heart. Yeah, see, we're not focused on the way things were in the past or trying to bring things from the past forward. We're focused on the eternal now, right? It was in the primeval plan that at first mankind and its earth home were cared for by divine instructors. It was a spiritual parentage starting everything aright for infant humanity. Then, when human beings became self-conscious and had knowledge of good and evil, they were made morally responsible for the way they affected their good home. They were given charge of all because of only in them were the fires of mind lighted, giving them insight and reason. Their bodies were made of the same stuff as that of Mother Earth, which was always to feed, clothe, and shelter them. Also, the electromagnetic and other nature forces operated in them and put them in touch on inner lines with all around him. We're part of evolution. Right? We're in this. We're in with it and evolving. We look at this as it's a nursery, in a sense. we look at it as a nursery, more or less, then we don't have any judgment of the past or trying to get it back to anything. And this is what's happening for good reason. So nature's work was to upbuild every form of use and beauty needed to imply the invisible currents of life cycling through all the kingdoms, needed to embody. Nature's work was to upbuild every form of use and beauty needed to embody the invisible currents of life cycling through all the kingdoms. Gradually, Earth's primeval forces and materials operated to condense and bring out the ethereal model forms, which were ideals provided from higher creative levels. These astral models of everything were, as they still are, links between the mental and material planes and caused reactions between the two realms. Thus, the material of Earth was subtly affected by the potent energies of conscious human thought and will and feeling. From the first, because of mankind's intimate relation to and its dominion over the subhuman kingdoms, nature perforce has reacted to the influence and the quality of its stewardship. Thus, its early childlike state was reflected in a happy Garden of Eden atmosphere. Later, when human beings gave rein to selfish thoughts and passions, the air around them was charged with the disordered forces of storms, disease, and enmity. The reality of this forgotten kinship between the human master and the subhuman kingdoms stands out in the history of the enormous cycles of the rounds and races on successive continents. Our recorded history also has its suitably timed examples. Was it not human unsanitary dealings with the materials embodied in them and those of their surroundings which reacted in the medieval plagues? Does not the present increase of mental and nervous diseases show the typical reaction of highly organized brain and nervous tissues to the exhausting tension of modern life? Are not today's upheavals in world politics, etc., reflected in unusually disturbed nature forces? And that's very deep. Each new root race began with a freshened earth, a favorable climate, peace among men, and between them and the beasts. When a race in mass grew selfish, harsh, and warring, the climate became austere, fertile lands became deserts, and beasts turned hostile. Each root race in serial order descending into material life imprinted its own quality upon the earth. The dominant quality of the first root race was that of the golden age, the second of that of the silver, the third out of the bronze, and the fourth out of the iron, but each individual root race evolved through the entire series of 4 periods. Scientific students of the striking climatic and geologic changes of the past eras naturally regard them as the factors which compelled man to move with them. The larger truth, however, is that whether the climate was on an upward or downward cycle, the people affected were reaping what they had sowed in their relations with each other and with nature. The record might go back many lives. The karmic law, which used natural forces of Earth to start the period that was due for more or less favorable conditions, also led men to when and where they belonged. The egos were born in fitting time and place, whether with an advancing or a retreating ice age, or during geologic ups and downs. We are not helpless pawns of the elements. We are relatively free to mold things after our desires of mind and heart, and broadly speaking, we make our world what it is. Thus, our creations, and karmically reflecting our general character, give us a key to self-knowledge, which is also the key to nature's secret. H.P. Blavatsky struck a forgotten note of unity for our discordant times when she said, "Humanity is the child of cyclic destiny, and not one of its units can escape its unconscious mission or get rid of the burden of its cooperative work with nature." That's incredible. Even when this splendid truth of our human part in a cosmic unity with all other things is beyond the grasp of the brain mind, it is not beyond the range of the intuition. The inner self remembers all that has gone before in its other lives. It is of this store of knowledge that glimpses are caught at times by the artist and poet. These glimpses are not mere flights of fancy. Rather, they are the nature lover's recognition that veiled in forms other than human, there vibrates a permeating quality of kinship with something muted and unnamed within himself. The poet longs for words that can tell others of his oneness with a reality pervading earth, sea, and sky. But it is beyond speech. It is an inner sense of unity only to be felt by the man-child vibrating with the mother nature with whom he has cycled down the ages on this earth. This love of nature is rooted in the hoary past, a spiritual memory of a primeval alliance. However, most of us are neither poets nor mystics. Logical minds want matter-of-fact evidence that cycles are operating everywhere. Well, it turns out that when we begin to look around at familiar things, they speak for themselves, a recurring periodicity. Take fluid things first. The ocean tides ebb and flow with clock-like regularity all around the earth like a great breath. The waves break on the shore at about the rate that we breathe. This rhythm is fixed beyond human power to change it. Fresh waters moistening the earth and take up by the transpiring plants to become cloud and rain and snow return upon their path to help growing things that feed and clothe and shelter us. Mother Nature caring for us always. The plant juices flow up from their busy roots to work with sunlight and perfecting growth, and directly or in outer rounds find their way back to earth. The life sap of orchard trees keeps time with the season for an annual display of new leaves and flowers and fruit, and then it flows down to the rest before another period of outgo. Only a unity of purpose could regulate the harmonious flow of these steady waves and annual tides of life. The grass blade, no less than the giant tree, has its own rate of pulsation. These everyday mysteries are so common that we overlook the wonder of them. Even the lowly form of life in the common caterpillar soon completes its period of crawling. Then it builds a little cocoon retreat wherein it dissolves into a mere protoplasmic jelly. Out of this shapeless mass, it takes on the form of a dainty butterfly to begin an airy life round, sipping nectar from flowers. Its eggs are timed to repeat this cycle of changing forms. This little thing's rhythmic course is as wonderful in its own way as that of the trade winds and the ocean currents, which steadily follow their own pathways to blow and flow. Certainly, we take it for granted that the returning seasons will reel off the Earth's picture of winter's cold emerging into spring's awakening, of things to ripen into summer's growth, and then the harvest home for the annual circuit of experience and progress. Meantime, there's a lot right here. This is very deep. The annual circuit of experience and progress. Meantime, The large wheel of Earth itself has rolled around its orbit, regulated so as to pass the spring equinox with its exact 50 seconds gain in time. This tiny fraction of time is the germ, so to say, of the Platonic great year, the cycle of 25,920 of our years. The natural course of minute wheels within mighty arcs recalls the old Hermetic saying, nothing is great, nothing is small in the divine economy. Astronomers tell of pulsating stars that dwarf our sun in size and splendor. All the celestial bodies are timed with the cosmic clock that regulates the revolving universe. The so-called laws of nature are the rhythmic operations of combined wills of great celestial beings working in harmony with the divine will and its ideal purpose. We are literally living cells in the organism of a great being, much as we are the overlord and the law for the trillions of cells that are evolving within our body. The same pattern and purpose is working out everywhere. This invisible but intelligent direction operating with such regularity in nature explains what is not accounted for by blind chance or natural selection or active chemical combinations. For example, the Cyclopedia speaks of the migratory flight of birds as the mystery of mysteries. The question is, how do these little creatures know when to start or where to go? How can they survive to find their way across great distances without chance to stop for rest? Sometimes the young broods, even on their first trip, go apart by themselves on a separate route to the distant nesting grounds. To say that these bird cycles are timed by instinct does not explain so purposeful a thing. These unself-conscious creatures instinctively respond to an old impulse which was strongly impressed upon the species. The idea that the Arctic region was the original home of the bird species that breed there has been coupled with a pre-glacial period when the far north had a springtime climate. This theory refers to those advances and recessions of the last great ice ages which have left their mark upon the body of the earth. The evidence of radical changes is found in the fossils of plants and animals. Of course, human life naturally flowed back and forth with the movements of desolate ice sheets. Perhaps that strange roar of the great white north felt by some Arctic explorers is the stirring of an ancient memory of home when the race was young. As migrating birds follow an old habit of nature, something of an analogy lingers deep within some of us human birds of passage. How many of us have felt that unreasoning lure to go back to the old homestead? Mature men and women, absorbed in handling large affairs, sometimes have a sudden urge to leave everything and revisit a lowly birthplace. They long to be where their infancy awoke in a warm home nest, and their childhood dawned in the tender light of parental love and care. Of course, if they go back, they find everything changed, as they have changed. Their mood passes, but for the time it made the past seem more real than the present. Somehow they were stirred by a vagrant breeze from an early turn in their present life cycle. Another gesture of the subhuman creatures moving with the high tides of reproductive life currents is seen in the migration of some fishes and animals. The salmon that swims thousands of miles upstream arrive at the spawning grounds thin and exhausted. They seem impelled to move with repetitive habits impressed upon the early species. They evidently retain the impress of a former habitat so old that meantime the earth has changed its contours. A similar nature puzzle is the migration of the northern European lemming. At irregular intervals, multitudes of these small rodents swarm down the mountains into the lowlands in a straight course, devouring all vegetation in their path. Enormous numbers swim into the sea where they perish. This strange contradiction to the natural instinct of self-preservation is accounted for by H.P.B., who says, coming as they do from all parts of Norway, a powerful instinct which survives throughout ages as an inheritance from their progenitors impels them to seek a continent once existing but now submerged beneath the ocean, and to court a watery grave. That is very telling there. Wow. These sporadic gestures of animal life are hints of old roads to yesterday's marked on the body of Earth. Explorations of the ocean floor have revealed many old submerged river valleys. Our own bodies likewise carry remnants of organs now useless, but they are biological evidence of wholly different states of human embodiment in early races. Nature's records all tell the consistent story of a wonderful past that deep within us is linked with the present as islands are joined to the mainland under the seas. Wow. Okay. That turned out to be quite a bit longer than I thought. Let me just pause this for a second. Okay, I think we will call 2 chapters a day good. And we'll pick this back up again tomorrow. Very interesting and telling stuff here. Okay, we'll see you soon.